It feels like things are shifting in the gaming industry in the last couple years. 2023 was arguably one of the best years in gaming, and we saw glimpses of greatness with games like Elden Ring back in 2022. Now we have whispers of Elden Ring DLC, and we're all feeling that itch again. We didn't know what was to come after Elden Ring, but when we got Baldur's Gate 3, Tears of the Kingdom, Alan Wake, and the list goes on, arguably even some of the games that were considered, quote, bad, I had some fun with. As great as 2023 was, it still had some real duds. Maybe even the best and worst year in gaming, I don't know. It still doesn't take away from how great it was though, either way. And we still do have tons of companies that are greedy as hell, don't get me wrong, but it seems like people have just had enough with the same greedy shit year after year. And more games that normally wouldn't get a ton of attention are starting to set the internet on fire.
I saw this thread of 100.
I mean, let's be real, guys. Some of these are fucking stupid. Like this? Like you're just throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Palworld's case might be a little different though. In full disclosure, I'm not and never have been a fan of Pokemon or survival games. I've never played a Pokemon game and no survival game has really sunk its hooks into me, so I stand kind of at a middle ground here. I do hate cancel culture in general if I'm being honest, and that's about the only time you'll hear me playing devil's advocate for someone or something. We have talked heavily on this channel about Baldur's Gate 3 and how it was considered an anomaly or an impossible standard. I've also mentioned how Elden Ring's success was similar and followed creative direction. Palworld is obviously nothing like those two games, but it's very similar in its success, blowing everything else away on Steam at the moment. And with that said, Palworld has surprised me so far. Maybe it's because I don't have a lot of experience in this genre, and maybe never gave it a fair chance, but so far it's been a great time. There isn't much else to say about the game in my opinion. People are playing a game like this because it's fun and respects the player. There isn't a shop so far, which hasn't stopped other games in early access in the past, and the game just sets out to be fun with a great gameplay loop. Maybe some of us briefly did buy into the whole drama surrounding this game at some point or another. For me, and I'm no expert obviously, but it seems like it's all being blown out of proportion at this time anyway. There isn't any real evidence of copying or AI, and obviously with the Pokemon franchise being as popular as it is, this game's getting a lot more attention than it normally would. Pokemon is a hugely impactful game for a lot of people. Some people defend Pokemon as if it's an actual part of themselves, and let's be honest, some fan bases are a little crazier than others.
And so for a game to come up...
if your personality is a video game, you're a fucking loser.
But again, Pokemon is not going anywhere, people. Palworld isn't really anything special if you take away the Pokemon similarities, and that's perfectly okay. The gameplay is fun, and that's the whole point. You can take familiar mechanics from a beloved franchise, but still make a totally different feeling game, and there isn't anything wrong with that in my opinion. I think they were genius putting something so familiar yet different in their game, and still managed to make their game vastly different from their inspiration. This kind of brings me back to the whole Genshin Impact versus Breath of the Wild back in the day. Everyone said it was a clone, but at its core they looked very similar from the outside looking in, but played vastly different in the end. But obviously, there is a much stronger player base in the Pokemon franchise, and a lot of people seem to be taking offense to this game because of their strong feelings for their childhood game. But to those people I would say, Pokemon isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's a long-running franchise that isn't going to be replaced, not to mention Palworld and Pokemon don't play at all the same. When I heard Pokemon with guns, I thought it would be closer to a Pokemon clone, but with a twist. Although I've never played a Pokemon game myself, I've been around long enough to know what they're all about. Plus, I haven't been living under a rock my entire life. And obviously there is some clear inspiration, but what piece of entertainment doesn't have some kind of inspiration from something else, or any kind of art for that matter? To be completely honest, I compare this kinda to the situation back in 2017 with PUBG and Fortnite.
The Courtroom. It's publisher v. publisher. Game against game. 100 legal teams enter, only one leaves. Winner, winner, copyright infringement dinner.
PUBG said it was a ripoff, but there's just ideas in video games that can't be copyrighted. And honestly, as stupid as this argument was, I still think it's a stronger argument than Palworld versus Pokemon. Unless Nintendo comes forward themselves and proves that some kind of models were outright stolen, this game seems to be its own idea, with great gameplay. In a hypothetical world though, if someone made something a lot closer to how Pokemon plays, I still don't feel like that would be a problem, because honestly there's already games like that. It just goes back to the PUBG versus Fortnite situation. You can't copyright mechanics or ideas in video games essentially. And on the other hand, if I was a fan of Pokemon, I would absolutely be dying for something new. Looking at some of the most recent Pokemon releases, they are just getting lazier with every release. I considered trying out some of these games until I actually looked at gameplay and reviews. If I were to try any of them at this point, it would have to be one of the older ones after seeing bugs like this. And honestly, I'm surprised someone else hasn't come along before this and made something more similar to Pokemon on a larger scale. I love turn-based games, but the dumpster fire that is the Pokemon franchise now isn't going to convince me to play anytime soon. They have gotten far too comfortable because this isn't enough competition at the moment. And other devs just don't know what to make of this game so far, and I can't blame them. We have had some of the most random games get so much recognition. I think there is a paradigm shift in the industry as of late. Maybe it started with Elden Ring, proving that you can make a game for gamers that doesn't have to be like other games and hold your hand. And most recently with Baldur's Gate 3, not sacrificing in the creative direction in any way and taking big chances. And now, here's Palworld setting the internet on fire all over again. It just seems like pre-2021, all these top spots on Steam were just reserved for big AAA games that were trying to nickel and dime us and milk us for everything that we had. And everyone was just buying into it year after year. I do mention Steam charts in a lot of my videos, but I think it's a very valuable tool. A good portion of the games breaking records are games that traditionally don't get this kind of attention. I've gone on and on about Baldur's Gate 3, and it's very deserved praise. It broke the internet with a silly bear scene, but went on to prove it's one of the greatest games of all time. Palworld and Baldur's Gate 3 are vastly different, but also have many great qualities in common. It just feels like games are becoming a bit more traditional and transparent. Palworld and Baldur's Gate 3 have nothing to hide. I love how upfront the dev team of Palworld have been through all of this. And if it turns out this game is a scam in any capacity, I'd be very surprised. Maybe it's just me, but I see a lot more people putting their foot down to these franchises that would normally get a pass. Maybe we're all just speaking with our wallets more. Maybe we're just getting sick of the marketing BS and just want to play games that are fun at a fair price. I'll never purchase another season pass in my life. I'm not totally against microtransactions as a whole if your game is free, I guess. But even then, I'm at the point in my life that I would just rather pay full price for a game if it means I get everything that the game could possibly offer. And not to say everyone is abandoning games like Call of Duty, but I've even seen a lot of my friends that usually only play Call of Duty trying new games as of late. I gave up on COD a long time ago, of course, but I still have friends that are hanging on to hope. And who can really blame them? You like what you like. If there aren't many games in the genre to choose from, or they all have the same greedy practices no matter what you play, what choice do you really have in the end? And it wasn't easy for me to make the decision to stop playing these types of games. I try a lot of games only because my friends tell me to play them. So the hardest part was just losing out on friendships. Luckily, I have Discord and Twitch to keep in touch with a lot of these people, but the connection will never be the same as playing a game with a friend. But even playing with friends aside, it was especially hard for me to say goodbye to the Destiny franchise.
Tell me, little light, what is your truth now?
I had a real connection with the game, and even though I won't ever play it again, it will always hold a special place in my heart. I was in denial about Destiny 2 for the longest time. I was honestly one of those people that died on the hill defending it for the longest time. It's really hard to break out of the mindset that a game isn't who we are.
If your personality is a video game, you're a fucking loser.
That's when it begins to edge towards unhealthy, in my opinion, like a drug addiction. Or if someone else doesn't like a game that you had a great time with, and they bash it on the internet, you should never take personal offense to that. To sum it all up, Palworld is just a breath of fresh air. It has clear inspiration from Pokemon, but it's clearly staying in its own lane. It's easy for people to jump on a bandwagon and give in to cancel culture, but I don't think any game company out there is going to mess around with a company as litigious as Nintendo. They are the last people you want to steal IP from. They will win every time in court and have no issue with ruining lives over these types of things. Maybe I'm wrong, but for now, I'm just enjoying it for what it is. A fun game that treats me with respect. Thanks for watching.